Hey, it's Shep Garcia here, and welcome back to Bobo's podcast. Today I have two special guests with me, Sadie and Marissa.
Hello.
And today we will be talking about Mamie Smith's Crazy Blues from the 1920s.
Yeah, so some background on Mamie is she was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she ended up in Harlem by traveling as a dancer, and she switched off to being a singer, and her legacy took off. And she was known as the only colored girl to sign records. And some of the norms of colored singers at the time was their influence on younger people for the risky behavior throughout jazz. And it was really strange to see colored men and women on stage after the previous time period of racism and mistreatment. And would you like to talk about the racial prejudice?
Yeah, racial prejudice at radio stations. Okay, so most of American white people, they got more airtime than colored people. And Mamie was a spark for women in jazz, and making her one of the first ladies of color in the recording studios. And other female artists did not become successful until the 1930s and 1940s.
Yeah, so Mamie was known as a spunky person, and would you like to talk about that?
She had a defiant spirit. She was very unapologetic. She never backed down.
And what I've heard of is she's been just overall a cool person and was a really crazy, spunky person at the time that was really defiant of the norms.
Very outgoing, yeah. She wanted to be very different during this time period, and she kind of wanted to be herself and not follow any others.
Which is one of the key roles of the Harlem Renaissance, and so it's a good key song and a key role. So, do you want to start talking about this song?
The song has a definite shape that it kind of goes in. So it first starts out where she's really sad about her husband leaving and lying to her, and then it goes into parts where she's very okay with it and very okay, I'm gonna rebel then because you're not with me anymore.
Yeah, and so some unofficial and official roles that we see that works and goes on in the society at the time is the patterns of husbands leaving their wives and people being left and them being sad, but also staying loyal and not going on and just moving on. They're sad, but they still stay loyal to their husbands, and that's one pattern that I see in this song, and also during a ton of songs in the Harlem Renaissance.
Yes, because during this time period, a lot of people, it was a lot about kind of parties and moving on. Nobody wanted to really stay put.
Flappers.
Yes, there were a lot of flappers, and they kind of wanted just to migrate to different people and talk to different people. And yes.
How do you think women were supposed to act in this time period? Because there were flappers, and there were also women who were stuck to their regular norms.
Yeah, females in this time period, they kind of they needed to stay loyal to their husband, because they kind of they supported the husband supported.
Yeah, they were dependent on them.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you think society has changed, or how behavior like this was found unacceptable then and versus now? Because I think that society has changed quite a bit back then, of course, since during that time was a way different time than it is now, obviously. And what seemed unacceptable then for sure was the attitude of being a flapper or a black singer that was super defiant and super outgoing, which was super outside of their norms at the time, which now seems we admire her, and she was amazing person, but back then I bet not as many people liked her.
I think now, because women have a right to work, they're much less dependent on a man to take care of them, and so they're kind of in this world free, being able to do whatever they please.
Yeah.
And overall relationships kind of back then were a little different, because I feel they weren't as
lovey.
Yeah, they weren't like real almost. Like it was kind of like fake, and then people would just move on and like kind of lose interest in like other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel today like relationships are more like trusted and like last longer.
Yeah, and so I was going to bring up how we view this song differently 100 years later, because it's almost its 100-year anniversary. It came out on August 10th, 1920, and how we view it differently, which kind of ties in with the last question. But like, we admire her now for being defiant and standing up for the way that she believed, and just like carving a way for other colored, especially women.
She paved the road for other artists.
Yeah, and I think that for one portion of the song, for the stanza, I guess? Yeah. It says, "'Cause my best friend said his last goodbye, there's a change in the ocean, there's a change in the deep blue sea, but baby, I tell you folks there ain't no change in me. My love for that man will always be." And so we can, during this part of the song, it describes how her love is so deep, nothing can change it, and how it's deeper than the ocean, deeper than the great deep blue sea, and her love is even farther than that, and it's not disrupted, and no matter what he does,
she'll always love him.
Yeah, she'll always love him.
I also found this to be interesting because the poem seems to go in waves with her happiness and her content versus her anger and sadness because of him leaving.
Yeah. She and like throughout she like always loves her husband, but like at a different scale. Once like she just doesn't want to leave, like, and then one time like she wants to like find him.
Yeah.
And
then
like,
once she wants to kill herself and be like this ganger.
So it's like a wave of emotions that like just kind of like crush through the whole song.
So the idea of an ocean and like waves and stuff goes throughout the song, and it's really interesting to watch. And is it affirming or criticizing our own society?
Definitely criticizing. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Bobo.
Because like I think it's criticizing because she's kind of saying like almost to the effect of like, why do I have to sit here and wait for you? You're gonna go out and like just leave.
You're lying to me.
You're lying. And she says that like that he's her best friend and he just leaves, but also she's still staying loyal, which it ties in with the norms at the time.
Yeah, and it kind of represents that like during this time period that like back then like just like it was a little different, I guess.
Yeah. And so overall, I think this song it left a huge legacy behind, and it carved a way for colored female singers. And she was known for her spunky and risky, rebellious attitude, which definitely left a huge impact.
Yeah.
And she continues to inspire other artists today. And yeah, I think that comes to the end of our podcast.
Yes, thank you guys for joining me today on this
Thank
fine
you.
evening.
Yes, thank you.